summer I turned 18 was supposed to be an unforgettable day for all the right reasons. That Friday afternoon, I came home from school with sweat clinging to my shirt and dust on my shoes, but I barely noticed. The principal had just announced a surprise one-week holiday with no warning, no assignments, just 7 full days of freedom dropped into our laps. To me, it felt like a gift from heaven. I imagined long afternoons, playing football with friends, late evenings, sitting outside under the fading orange sky, and mornings where I could sleep without an alarm dragging me awake. In USA, summer doesn't cool down for anyone, but that week felt golden and limitless. When I told my parents about the holiday, I could hardly contain my excitement. My mother smiled and shook her head at my energy. My father simply nodded and reminded me, as he always did, to stay out of trouble. Free time can lead to foolish decisions, he warned. I laughed it off. I wasn't planning anything dangerous. I just wanted to enjoy being young. If only I had taken his words more seriously. The next morning, I was sitting on our porch when I heard the rumble of a truck engine. A large moving truck pulled up to the old Victorian-style house across the street. That house had been empty for years, its paint peeling and its windows always dark. Movers began unloading heavy furniture, boxes, and what looked like antique wooden cabinets. I watched out of boredom more than curiosity. By mid-afternoon, the truck drove away, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than before. That was when I saw her. She stepped out onto the lawn, adjusting a wide sun hat that shaded her face. She looked about my age, maybe 18 as well. There was something striking about her, not just her beauty, but the way she carried herself. She was calm, almost too calm. Her skin looked pale under the harsh sun, and her eyes seemed distant, as if she were looking at something far beyond the street in front of her. I convinced myself I was imagining it. After all, I was bored, so I crossed the street to introduce myself. Her name was Elena. Her voice was soft, almost fragile, like dry leaves brushing against each other. We talked about the neighborhood, about how quiet it was, about how hot the weather had been lately. The conversation felt normal at first, though she rarely blinked and held eye contact a second longer. Then, with a playful tilt of her head, she suggested something unexpected. "Let's play hide and seek," she whispered. "I'll hide first. You will seek, but don't come looking until you've counted to 20. I laughed. It felt childish, but harmless. And since the day is going bored, I decided to do it to make it more fun. And maybe she was just trying to break the ice. I leaned against her porch railing and closed my eyes. 1, 2, 3. I counted slowly, hearing nothing but the buzzing of cicadas and the faint rustle of leaves. When I counted to 20 and opened my eyes, the street was silent. Too silent. The buzzing insects seemed louder now, almost aggressive. I checked behind the bushes in her yard, crouched to look under parked cars, and circled the side of the house. No sign of her. I returned to her driveway and noticed the front door slightly open. "Elena," I called out. No response. I hesitated, then pushed the door wider and stepped inside. The air inside the house was cold, and there was no air conditioner running. The furniture was still covered in white sheets, turning ordinary shapes into ghostly figures in the dim light. My footsteps echoed softly on the wooden floor. I checked behind sofas, behind curtains, even inside a closet near the hallway, but still can't find her. Then I heard a soft thump from inside the kitchen. The layout of the house was strange. Narrow hallways twisted at odd angles, making the house feel bigger than it looked from outside. The walls seemed to stretch endlessly, and for a moment I felt disoriented. When I finally reached the kitchen, it was empty. One cabinet door swung open slowly, creaking back and forth, but Elena wasn't there. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the silence, and it came from the sitting room. I had just left. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Elena!" I ran back, nearly slipping on the wooden floor. I tore the sheets off furniture, checked behind chairs again, but still nothing. The room was still and empty. H. I heard another scream, and this time, it came from the kitchen again. I spun around and sprinted back, my breathing ragged and uneven. I flung open cupboards, yanked open the pantry door, even checked inside the oven. Completely empty. My fear was no longer playful confusion. It was sharp and real. Then came a heavy bang from upstairs. My blood turned cold. No one could move that fast between rooms without me seeing them. This wasn't someone hiding anymore. It felt like something was toying with me, pulling me deeper into the house one sound at a time. A heavy dread settled in my stomach. Every instinct told me to leave, so I did. I ran out the front door and didn't stop until I reached my own house. I locked the door behind me and stayed in my room for the rest of the evening, pretending everything was normal. I didn't tell my parents. The thought of admitting I had been terrified during a childish game felt humiliating. That night, the house was unusually quiet. No television, no traffic sounds, just silence. Before going to bed, I walked to my window to close it against mosquitoes. As I reached for the latch, I glanced across the street. In the second-story window of the Victorian house, Elena stood behind the glass. She wasn't wearing her hat. Her face looked thinner now, almost hollow. Her skin unnaturally pale. She was pressed against the window, staring directly at me, and she was smiling. It wasn't a normal smile. It stretched wide, pulling at her cheeks in a jagged curve that didn't look human. Her eyes didn't blink. They didn't move. She simply stood there, watching. Many thoughts raced through my head. Where had she been inside that house? Why had the rooms been empty? Where were her parents? Had anyone actually moved in at all? Slowly, without breaking eye contact, I pulled my curtains shut. I climbed into bed and pulled the covers over my head, but it didn't help. The image of that smile burned into my mind. I understood something then that made my stomach twist. The game of hide and seek she mentioned is far from ordinary. And now, no matter where I went, I had the terrible feeling that I was the one being watched, and there was nowhere left for me to hide. I hadn't seen my mother in 5 years. After my parents divorced, I moved to the city with my father. His world was loud, ambitious, and polished with tall buildings, expensive restaurants, private schools, and opportunities that seemed endless. Life with him was comfortable and fast. There was always something happening, always somewhere to be. At first, I told myself I didn't miss the quiet town where I grew up. I convinced myself that moving on was part of growing up, but guilt has a way of growing in silence. Over the years, phone calls with my mother became shorter. Birthdays were reduced to brief messages. I knew she was alone in that small town, still living in the same modest house filled with memories of when we were a family. Eventually, the guilt became too heavy to ignore. That summer, I decided to visit her. I told myself it was long overdue. When I arrived, she was standing outside before the bus had even fully stopped. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair now streaked with gray, fine lines around her eyes. But when she smiled at me, it was the same warm smile from my childhood. She held me tightly, as if afraid I might disappear again. That first evening, word spread quickly that I was back. Small towns have a way of knowing everything. My childhood friend Silas came over just before sunset. We had grown up together, play football in dusty fields. Late night talks about escaping the town someday. Seeing him again felt strange. He looked older, harder somehow. His eyes moved quickly, always scanning, and his laugh didn't reach his eyes. Still, I brushed it off. 5 years changes people. Let's grab a drink, Silas suggested, clapping me on the shoulder. For old time's sake. Before I left, my mother stopped me near the door. She handed me a small box wrapped neatly in paper. Inside was a heavy silver watch. "It's for you, Leo," she said softly, "to help you keep track of time. Don't stay out too late." I smiled, thinking it was just a thoughtful gift. I strapped it onto my wrist. It felt slightly heavier than I expected, but I didn't question it because it was a gift from my mother. Silas and I walked to a bar on the edge of the town, a place tucked away near abandoned warehouses and quiet streets. It wasn't somewhere I remembered from my younger days. The inside was dim, lit by a flickering neon sign, and a few hanging bulbs that cast long shadows on the walls. Silas kept ordering drinks. One round turned into 2, then 3. We talked about my father's wealth, the city lifestyle, the cars and apartments. I admit, I boasted. I talked about opportunities and money and how easy things had become. Silas listened carefully, nodding, asking questions about my father's business. about how often I visited big places in the city. As the night wore on, my vision began to blur. The room felt like it was spinning slightly off balance. My thoughts slowed. I remember looking at Silas one last time. The neon light flickered across his face, and for a brief moment, his smile didn't look friendly. It looked sharp, hungry. Then everything went black. When I woke up, the air was cold and damp. The smell of mold and concrete filled my nose. My head pounded as if someone were striking it with a hammer in steady rhythm. I tried to lift my arms but couldn't. Thick rope cut into my wrists, binding me tightly to a wooden chair. Panic surged through me. I looked around. I was in a basement. The walls were unfinished concrete. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, swinging slightly. In the far corner, Silas stood with three unfamiliar men. They were speaking in low voices. On a nearby table, I saw a stack of passports and a pile of cash. It took only seconds for the truth to settle in. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Silas wasn't my friend anymore. He was selling me. Silas, I croaked, my throat dry. Please, what are you doing? My mom is waiting for me. He turned slowly and walked toward me. His expression was cold, empty. Your mom has been waiting for you for years, Leo, he said calmly. A few more days won't make a difference. By the time anyone figures it out, you'll be far away. Your father's money can't reach you where you're going. The words hit harder than the ropes around my wrists. I struggled, but the chair scraped uselessly against the floor. Fear rushed through me, sharp and paralyzing. I thought of my mother standing by the door when I left. I thought of the way she hugged me at the bus stop. Then I heard a faint beep. The men froze. What was that? One of them snapped. Another beep followed, louder this time. Then my eyes shifted down to my wrist. The silver watch was glowing faintly. A small blue light pulsed from its face and it was beeping. Break it, Silas shouted, grabbing my arm. But before he could rip it off, a deafening crash echoed from above. The metal door at the top of the basement stairs burst open. Bright flashlights flooded the room. What we all heard is police. Don't move. Everything happened at once. Shouting, boots pounding down the stairs, men dropping to the ground. Silas tried to run but was tackled before he reached the wall. Within minutes, they were all handcuffed. An officer cut the ropes from my wrists. My hands were numb, marked with deep red burns from the rope. Outside, police cars lined the street. Red and blue lights flashed against the dark buildings. Behind the police tape, I saw my mother. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she searched for me. She ran to me the moment they allowed her through. I knew something was wrong, she whispered, holding me tightly. You didn't come home by midnight, and that makes me reported it immediately. Then she continued and said the watch wasn't just a gift. It was a GPS tracker. She had hidden it inside, just in case. A mother's quiet fear turned into preparation. Later at the station, investigators revealed the truth. Silas had been part of a trafficking network operating across multiple towns. He targeted people he knew, people who trusted him. He had been on a watch list for 2 years, constantly moving to avoid suspicion. I left that town again soon after, but this time, I didn't leave my mother behind. I brought her to the city with me. She deserved safety, comfort, and peace. I still wear that watch every day. Not because I need to check the time, but because it reminds me of something far more important. In a world where danger can wear the face of an old friend, love can also hide inside something as simple as a gift. And sometimes, that love is the only reason you make it home alive. The heat at 23 feels different from the heat at 18. When I was younger, summer felt exciting, wild and full of possibility. But at 23, the heat feels heavy, like something pressing down on your shoulders, refusing to move. That Tuesday in July was unbearable. The sun hung in the sky like a white coin, bright and merciless. Even inside my house, the air felt thick. The ceiling fan spun lazily above us, doing little more than pushing warm air around the room. My best friend, Marcus, had come over around noon. We were sitting in my living room, playing FIFA and complaining about the humidity. Marcus was laughing, yelling at the screen every time I scored, accusing the game of cheating him. He grabbed handfuls of chips from the bowl on the table and leaned back into the sofa like he owned the place. There was nothing strange about him, nothing unusual at all. We had been playing for about an hour when a loud, steady knock echoed through the house. It wasn't a casual tap. It was heavy and deliberate. "Hold on," I said, pausing the game. Marcus didn't respond. He didn't even look up. His eyes remained fixed on the frozen screen, his face completely still. I walked to the front door and opened it. Marcus's parents were standing there. His mother's eyes were swollen and red, as if she had been crying for hours. His father looked pale and shaken, like someone who had aged years in a single morning. Before I could greet them, his father spoke in a strained voice. "He's gone, David. Marcus. There was an accident this morning. He didn't make it." For a second, I thought I had misheard him. The words didn't make sense. The world felt like it tilted slightly, as if the ground beneath me had shifted. My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. "Marcus is here. He's inside. We're playing games," I said to them. His mother let out a broken sob. His father's hands trembled as he shook his head slowly. "David, please. The hospital called us 2 hours ago. He died instantly. We just came from identifying his body." My mind refused to accept what they were saying. I glanced over my shoulder into the hallway. I saw that the fan was still spinning. The television was still on and Marcus was still inside. What would you do in that moment if you were in my situation? Would you insist they were wrong? Would you invite them inside to prove it? Or would you begin to understand that something was terribly, impossibly wrong? I didn't argue. I didn't invite them in. I stepped back and quietly closed the door on their grief-stricken faces. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. The house felt different as I walked back toward the living room. The air that had felt suffocating moments earlier now felt icy against my skin. The smell of the snacks on the table suddenly made my stomach churn. What had smelled like salted chips now carried a faint, sour odor, like meat left out in the sun too long. I reached the doorway to the living room and froze. I saw Marcus still sitting on the sofa, but he wasn't playing anymore. He was perfectly still, his back facing me, his shoulders stiff. "Marcus," I said quietly. He didn't turn around, but he spoke. His voice sounded like his own, yet distant, like it was echoing from the bottom of a deep well. "My parents are outside, David. Why didn't you let them in?" he said immediately. A wave of cold washed over me. I hadn't told him who was at the door. I hadn't said anything. I stared at the back of his shirt and noticed something I hadn't seen before. A dark stain spread across the fabric between his shoulders. It looked damp. The color reminded me of dried blood. "They said you're dead," I whispered. The room seemed to grow darker, even though the afternoon sun still shone through the curtains. Very slowly, Marcus began to turn his head. Not his body, just his head. His neck twisted in a way that no human neck should twist. I heard a faint cracking sound, like dry sticks snapping under pressure. The movement didn't stop where it should have. His head kept turning until his face was looking directly at me over his shoulder. My heart nearly stopped. His eyes were gone. In their place were two deep, hollow pits filled with black, wet soil. Dark earth clung to his skin, as if he had been buried. A single fly crawled slowly out of his mouth and buzzed lazily into the room. "Do I look dead to you, David?" he asked. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. My legs felt weak, barely able to hold me up. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. I turned and sprinted toward the back door, fumbling with the handle before bursting outside into the blinding sunlight. The heat hit me like a wall, but I didn't care. I ran down the street, past neighbors who stared in confusion, past cars, past everything. I didn't stop until I reached the police station. Between gasps for air, I told them everything. They exchanged looks, clearly doubting my sanity, but they agreed to check. When we returned to my house, it was silent. The TV was off. The fan had stopped spinning. The bowls of snacks were gone. The living room looked untouched except for one thing. On the sofa, exactly where Marcus had been sitting, was a large, damp pile of dark cemetery dirt. Resting on top of it was a rusted hospital wristband with his full name printed clearly across the plastic. The officers stared at it in stunned silence. There was no sign of forced entry, no footprints, no explanation. Marcus was buried 3 days later. I attended the funeral from a distance, unable to stand near the coffin. I couldn't bring myself to look inside. To this day, I don't live alone. I always make sure someone is in the house with me, because sometimes, late at night, I hear a slow, steady knock at the door. And every time it happens, I wonder if it is someone I know, or is it something wearing a familiar face, waiting patiently to be invited inside for one more game.